You know, nobody's talking about fixing all the damage. Okay. And the precautionary principle. So here's our water manager. The first quote is from O Canada. Currently, it would be difficult to argue that Canada manages water for the primary purpose of protecting common values. Most provincial governments manage water in order to maximize private, commercial, and/or industrial activity. And of course, also because they charge more for that kind of stuff, the government makes more money. StatsCan put out a freshwater report for Canada in September of 2010, and here they say more than 90% of fresh water went to support economic activity. About 9% was used for residential purposes. So there are 46,000 water licenses in BC. 44,000, I'm sorry, as of the last time they counted, because they quit counting as soon as they started doing this Water Act stuff. First Nations in BC that haven't signed treaties are sovereign entities. They are governments. You bet they have to be accommodated. And the government So I just put the basic scientific facts. Water flows downhill. That's why all water law is based on downstream usage. If somebody does something above you on a stream, you have a right to speak to it. Because forestry was such a sacred cow in this province, there was never any scientific research done on the effects of forestry on water. But now that forestry is tanked, in 2008 we finally got a scientific study. And look what it says. Road cuts with large seepage faces may depress the local water table, influence timing and magnitude of stream peak flows, reduce groundwater flow to downslope environments. Forest harvesting. Now what we always get told is that local water tables will rise because the government shut 6 this year. You see, the whole problem with sustainable management, how can you manage water sustainably if you don't know how much you have? If all you're measuring is how much I'm using and you're using, how can you manage it? You have to have the data that tells you what the supply is. That's the first step. It's significantly missing from any of the discussions. They held a water science symposium in August of 2010 with these universities. And this is interesting, MITACs, Mathematics of Information Technology and Complex Systems. It's a private group. It's funded 50% by taxpayers and 50% by industry. And they write computer programs and model things. So they're going to model the water. They're not going to measure it. They're going to write computer programs. And they're going to say, well, you know, this stream is on this kind of geology, and it's at this longitude and latitude, and it snows this. Well, this is how much water is in that stream. That's what they're going to do. But watershed plans and minimum stream flows. Setting minimum stream flows. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to use a formula-based stream flow. They're going to model it with computers, with young kids sitting in front of computers, you know, somewhere back east, probably at MITAC. All the graduate students go to MITAC and they get funding to do this stuff. This deep, and it's up there. And watershed plans. Our current Water Act calls for watershed plans. It specifically calls for the government to do it. They never did it. It costs too much money. They did one. in the Okanagan, where there was that big battle between a guy who was grazing his cattle and maybe agriculture, I can't remember, but there was this big, huge fight in the Okanagan a few years ago, so they did one watershed plan for that stream that he was on. And they did one in Abbotsford because Abbotsford discovered that their aquifer is disappearing. Of course, that used to be all farmland, right? Now it's completely covered with houses this far apart. And of course, they have a water problem. So now what they're going to do under WASA is they're going to delegate it to local governments and volunteer groups. And they say they're going to assist, but I don't know what assist means. I bet it's not money. So that's right out of your pocket again, local taxpayers. Okay, click, click. Integrated management. These are all the acts that cover water in BC. The Water Act really should stand as the overriding legislation. There's no question about it, but here they all are. There's another thing that happened. Remember just before Gordon Campbell disappeared, resigned and disappeared, he changed a bunch of ministries? The Water Stewardship Division has always been under the Ministry of Environment. He moved the entire Water Stewardship Division into that Forest, Lands, and Natural Resource Operations one-stop shop ministry. Okay? That means that our Water Act is no longer with the Ministry of Environment. The water allocation is no longer with the Ministry of Environment. It's with the Ministry of Natural Resource Operations. What do you think that's going to mean for us?
Resource extraction.
Huh?
Resource extraction.
Yep. So how it gets managed is really, there are all these RMA and RRZs and RMZs and you know how they do. But really what matters is the riparian reserve zone, because that's where they can't take trees away from the edges of streams. And as you see, these are classed by size. So S4, S5, and S6 are the smallest streams. S4 streams are fish-bearing, S5 and 6 aren't. But almost all water licenses in BC, domestic use, are on S4, 5, and 6. They can cut right to the bank. Next slide. This is a comparison from different jurisdictions. There's BC right up at the stream there, public and private forests. Washington. In BC urban streams, like in the lower mainland, they get a little bit more protection, 15 meters. But I mean, look what Washington federal forests do. 91 meter buffer zone on their streams. We have 0. They actually protect salmon there. Okay. So here we are at watershed logging. Why? I thought you'd like this picture of Chapman Creek. It's on the Sunshine Coast. They had 200 landslides. It cost their water treatment system, they spent over $2 million cleaning it from silt over and over again from these road cuts. And that looks a lot like Perry Ridge, doesn't it? I mean, the topography. Yeah. The one thing they capitulated on was first in time, first in right. And I truly believe that the agricultural associations and the cattlemen's associations and so on are the ones that stop them from getting rid of that. Well, of course, if they're going to have water markets and water trading, they've got to get rid of FIT for first in time, first in right. They've got to take away the time stamp on our licenses, right? So we can trade them out. And also so that they can allocate water any way they want. So it looks like FIT they're not going to take it away. What they're saying is, well, we're going to do it. We're going to override FIT in times of scarcity. Well, see, that's already written into our Water Act. If there's a forest fire, I can't tell somebody they can't take water out of my creek.